In today's video, we're looking into a scenario in which the New World disappears. That includes Oceania and North and South America, or Americas. Depends on what you call it. But Russia's invasion, let's say. Even though, Russia's in a bad spot in this war. They can't win, but they also can't lose, if that makes sense. If they lose, the person in charge loses grip of power, and do they want it? No. So this war is really in a bad spot with the Russia-Ukraine area. So without American support suddenly stopping, Ukraine's going to be in a much worse position. But I would say if they try to push Russia back, they could. But what they would have to do first is, well, they would kind of have to withdraw from up here, which that puts that back under Russian control. What they get in return is this. And I would say Russia would start a last-minute offensive, seeing how bad the situation is going in the north, to try to keep its people in support of this war. With it going really well, with the soldiers here being moralized by the told they're going to take the capital, and this will end the war. Of course, Russia manages to occupy that, but Ukrainian resistance doesn't allow it. And while they move in, and Russia's completely kicked back out of this offensive goal, with Ukraine retaking it, and Ukraine plans an offensive into Zaporizhzhia Oblast. And they move in, and they quickly make it to the coast, take Melitopol and Tokmat. And well, now they move in across the Kherson River. And they get close to Crimea. But they fail to advance in. With Russia's government, led by Putin, being overthrown at this point, a new government in place decides to withdraw and keep the Donbass region in Crimea, is what they agree to, or they will not sign it. So Ukraine agrees. It's Russia. Or at least they call it. Although it was unsuccessful technically. But now that Russia has been overthrown, it is now not part of this. The CSTO has collapsed in a way, if you think of it. And most likely after this situation would occur, since no one's supporting Belarus, the people would rise up against the government and form an insurrection and overthrow the government, leading to Belarus having a democracy. Although Russia probably still dislikes the nation, with Belarus, new government led by the people, trying to appease relations with the people and try to look better with the West. With Ukraine deciding it's in their best interest to join NATO, so they do that. With Russia's new government warning about it, but there's really nothing they can do about it. With China supporting coups across Africa and the poorer countries, with them launching a pro-Chinese coup occurring in Central African Republic, with the idea of the East African Federation not being like exactly a thing, but they decide to sign the Defense and Economic Alliance, a cooperative alliance basically. And while it forms with all of these nations, with all 7 nations, with Egypt and Ethiopia most likely getting into it, with Sudan probably supporting Egypt, but then, and in India and Pakistan there might be a war scene because of the situation. With it realizing there's no easy way of defending a few of the nations realized out here, that'd be South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines, and Vietnam decide to form an alliance. This is to defend against Chinese aggression. And it supports claims of nations in the South. So these 4 nations form it, with China deciding it's time for their own alliance that they rightfully should have. So they decide to form one. with North Korea, Laos, and Cambodia. Basically all the communist nations. And Cuba joined. Just kidding, it doesn't exist. I just forgot that this is a scenario where it disappears. With China becoming dominant on the world stage, with some nations deciding to join their alliance. With Russia's new government being very anti-Western. And while a decision to disband the CSTO is made, and well, pretty much, what else could happen? With them with an idea to split Yemen being passed, and it occurs, and it goes pretty well. With what's left of the UN, which is Chinese dominated now, agrees on that course of action. So it is agreed. With the northern part being more pro-Chinese than the southern, I would say. But it's more than likely this region would join Iran because it's a pro-Iran area. So Iran's alliance would grow. With what else could we do? Trying to think of what could happen. And in the Middle East, Israel eventually defeats Hamas. Or they're forced out, one or the other. Those are two options. And while Morocco finally takes the Western Sahara back, now we can have some fun wars in the next episode. With a vote being held to see if Moldova should be allowed to join NATO as they want to. And it occurs, yes. With Ukraine having just lost not much land, really, if you think of it. And let's say this is 2030. This is pretty much the world in 2030. Or we could say 2028, probably more realistic. And I don't really see any more possible conflicts. But I do see a possibility of Kazakhstan joining this Chinese-led alliance. If we get 10 likes, there will be a part 2 of this series. But if we don't, it won't become a series. So please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, but not until you subscribe. Bye, guys!